Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. Our journey through the Conjuring franchise has brought me to The Nun, a film I watched when it came out that I wasn't taken with at all, but that I desperately hoped to be able to have some fun at least with on my second time around, disengaging brain and just letting the film wash over me. But try as I might, and I really did try to get on with The Nun, we're never going to be friends, The Nun and me. I just think it fails on so many levels. If you like the film, if you get a kick out of it and enjoy it, even if you enjoy it in a bubblegum kind of way, more power to you. I've tried my hardest to get on board this time round. It's just not for me. Normally, I like to try and start off these videos with the positives, the things that I like. It looks pretty. I mean, it looks really nice. It's shot really well. It's nice and gothic and shadowy. The interiors are exactly as you would want them to be. The sort of quasi-Hammer vibes of the scene in the inn, in the village, where they're talking about what's been happening up there at the nunnery, and that the evil is spreading out from the place and leaching into the village. And I got to that scene and I thought, well, let's have more of this. Let's really lean into the Hammer aesthetic and the old Universal monster movies. Let's have the villagers go to the place with pitchforks and fire and in a mob and try and break in and break down the doors and then face Valak. And I can imagine villagers being thrown left, right and centre, Valak going, necks being twisted, people being levitated, arms broken and cracked and stuff. All of this glorious, over-the-top, sort of kitschy, gothic Hammer sensibility, just amped up on speed for a fun Conjuring movie. That is not what we got. What we get is a story of a nun who has supposedly committed suicide, and a priest and a novice are sent by the Vatican there to investigate to see whether a mortal sin has been committed. And whilst they're there, they come face to face with Valak, the demon, who has taken the form of a nun. And it's boring. It's a boring story. It's the wrong story to tell, and I'll tell you exactly why. The film begins with two nuns. It's a really cool opening, I will give it that. The film begins with two nuns attempting to put the metaphorical iron chains around the demon once more. They have a weapon, something they think will work to contain the demon. One of them gets dragged screaming into the darkness, and as she goes, screams to the last remaining nun that she has to kill herself because the demon wants to take over, has to take over a living body in order for it to leave the confines of the nunnery. And our nun, rather than being possessed by Valak, as she glides ominously down the corridor towards her, hangs herself. Excellent sequence, and is that event, the hanging, that is the catalyst of the Vatican investigation, sending more people to the nunnery. My problem with that is that the start of the movie tells us that everyone in the nunnery is dead. These last two characters we've seen are the last two people left alive, and the place is empty. So when we follow our new characters on their investigation in there, and we come across various nuns who are at constant prayer and trying their best to sort of stave off the evil influence of the demon, it's all for naught. The big revelation at the end that they're all spirits and it's like, well, yeah, you told us at the start that the place was empty. This is so frustrating. So it becomes a film that I think rests on its laurels. It asks us as a viewer to be scared or on edge anytime we see a nun. And it's set in a nunnery. So pretty much wherever you turn, whoever you look at, is going to be a fucking nun. And I can't muster up the kind of energy to engage with a film that expects that much and does so little to actually earn my tension or my suspense or my shock or my fright. The scares in it are lazy and they are mostly of the jump scare variety. All of the hard work building up Valak as this imposing figure was done in The Conjuring 2 and done really well in The Conjuring 2. If you check out my video for Conjuring 2, whilst I have some pros and cons and mixed feelings about that movie, everything that involves Valak I think is absolutely tip-top superb. And the nun seems to be content to say, well, The Conjuring 2 has built up an awful lot of goodwill for this character of Valak, so just putting it on a screen will be enough. Just having Valak appear, that'll do, because Valak's already scary, because this other film has put in all of the spade work, and no, that is not the case. Valak does one interesting thing in this film where she wants to get this key, this MacGuffin key off our novice nun, and to do so tilts the corridor almost, actually I think to a 90-degree angle while she stood there. Whoa. And so when the nun drops the key, it just slides down the floor, which is now the wall, and she scoops it up. Superb. Do you know what I would have liked to have seen? Do you know what story I believe should have been told? Valak picking off the nuns one by one, turning them, corrupting them. We learn at the start that she takes on the form of a nun, this demon, so it can pass amongst the rest of the nuns without being detected. Imagine now a story where you have a group of cloistered nuns. They don't actually ever leave the nunnery. That's the same as what we have in The Nun. They have to pray 24 hours a day in shifts constantly to try and keep an evil at bay. That's what we have in The Nun. So again, we're not changing much. We're just focusing instead on the story of the nuns trying to contain this evil force, and Valak spreading its evil influence throughout them, killing some, corrupting others. We could have scenes of blasphemy. We could nod towards the devils and things like that. Can you imagine how horrific it would be to have... I mean, there's a statue of the Blessed Mary in the movie. Imagine if instead of that we had a real full-on sort of Romanian Catholic icon of the Virgin Mary that is slowly visually corrupted until the symbol of purity looks like Valak at the end. Possessions, heresies, murder, suicide. And then we could even have a similar character of a novice nun who would be one of our last survivors, who decides, who has been wavering about whether to take her vows or not, and then decides at the end of the movie, after all she's seen, yes, I will take my vows, this is a good fight to fight, and so becomes the nun and fights Valak. Just as Teysa Farmiga's character does in the movie, we could have a character have that arc, which I think is interesting and good, and have her fail, and have her commit seeming suicide at the end to thwart the demon as it goes back down the corridor into this room that they have it contained in. Excellent. The evil is contained. And no, the end credit sequence could be this group of investigators coming from the Vatican, and wouldn't you know it, there are some more warm bodies coming, some more warm souls, and Valak is going to get another bite of that apple and another attempt to possess someone, whereas if they'd all just been left alone, everything would have worked out fine. As it is, we get a really plodding, weak, dare I say, quite boring story of a couple of people poking around the environs of a nunnery, reading musty old books, having conversations with nuns that we know to be dead already because we've already been told that they're all already dead. And none of it ever really pays off. There was an excellent setup in a cemetery where all the graves have little bells attached to them, where the string goes down into the graves so that if you're accidentally buried alive, you can pull on it, ring the bell, and someone will come and dig you up. All very Edgar Allan Poe. I loved that. I was expecting that to pay off really well. And it doesn't. You know at some point all the bells are going to tinkle. And so you know someone's going to get buried alive. And lo and behold, a priest does get buried alive, and he pulls on the bell. And then Tessa Farmiga is running around, and what happens is what you know is exactly going to happen. All the bells start going, and you're like, oh, how's she gonna know where to dig? This is kind of fucked up. I kind of like this, but then she just uses her nun vision powers to go, oh, it's that one. I'll dig over there. Pointless, boring. What a waste of a good setup. And to add insult to injury, the sequence of her digging him up directly apes a sequence from Lucio Fulci's The City of the Living Dead, which he did decades previously and much, much better. It instantly reminded me of the bit in Annabelle that rips off a sequence in Mario Bava's Shock, but doesn't do it quite as well. Oh, if only the nun had lent either into Hammer Gothic or the more lurid and extreme aspects of the 70s and 80s Italian horror cinema that one tiny sequence tries to reference, or some awesome mashup of Hammer Gothic and lurid Italian Lucio Fulci-esque stuff. It pains me to report that The Nun continues to be boring, and probably, from what I've seen so far, although I've yet to see The Curse of La Llorona, the worst movie of the Conjuring franchise, when The Conjuring 2 did such a bang-up job of introducing an original, scary and formidable adversary in the shape of Valak in this nun form, that just does nothing with it. I believe there is going to be a Nun 2, so maybe they can pull off an Annabelle creation and have the second spin-off for this character actually be a solid and good film. I think there's something interesting you can do with that character. Sadly, they've already wasted sort of the religious setting. There could have been so many amazing stories you could have told with a group of cloistered nuns trapped with a demon inside their nunnery, and we got none of that.
I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.